Squelch Cave. I'm Anthony, and that's Konrad. Say hi to the people, Konrad.
I see. We discussed the fact that I didn't get to say hello last week, and I've gone early this time.
Yeah, you know what it is. Like I'm so used to just doing videos on my own, and you are as well, because it's been a while since we've actually done a proper podcast like this. That we're a little off. We're a little off, Konrad. But you know what?
We'll get the timing back.
We'll get it back. Ring rust.
There's a bit of the old magic left in the podcast.
yeah. Well, judging by the response last week from you, the viewers, we are very, very humbled by the response. We couldn't believe when we started at $18.99 that you would all come flooding back, because I think we all enjoyed a lovely journey with Dark, and it's great to see so many people wanted to come back for more. Also, I will say thank you very much to the new listeners who've come along. If this is the first time you've ever listened to the podcast, we did do one for Dark, we did one for the OA, and also for Westworld. I heard there's a season 4. Let's just leave it there.
There was a season 4, and then they abruptly cancelled it. And if that's not a sign from God that we don't have to do season 4 of Westworld, then I don't know what is, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay, we're trying to be brief in these intros, but I just want to very quickly say, Konrad, you've divided the audience with the hair.
I saw one. I saw one comment.
Half the audience is saying great hair, love the hair. And the other half of the audience is saying, get a haircut, Konrad. Now, let me say this to you. We are a long hair podcast here. I have long hair as well. If you don't like it, you can just mosey on down the road. Go and watch Pete Peppers. Go and watch someone else who's covering $18.99, because they're not going to have the depth. They're not going to have the friendship that Konrad and I have. You know what? If you don't like long hair, get out of here.
They're not going to have the luscious locks that you're going to see in this podcast. These are my COVID. This is my COVID hair that's just carried on past COVID.
I mean, it looks great, Konrad. I want to affirm the fact that hair is fantastic. You look great. You do you. All right, you do you. Right. And with that hair swish, we'll jump into the pre-recorded Konrad's pre-thoughts.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of this here video series where we go through 1899. This is me, Konrad, before I've seen episode 2 of season 1. To recap what I said last week, or what I think I said last week, I talked about facial scarring. I'm not going to get too much into that now, because that might just be like a metaphorical thing, or a way of denoting class, or some kind of like literal scars to represent emotional ones, or something like that. And I mentioned not really knowing what was going to come in the next episode. I think, having had a week now to reflect on it, I'm going to say it seems like it's probably likely that we're going to see a lot more of Wet Man, potentially Henry, in this episode. He stowed away, or he snuck on board last episode, so I think it'd be crazy to not see more of him in this episode. I think we will... Who do I think is going to get developed? I'm going to say Jerome and Oleg are going to get some more development in this episode. I don't know why. I just feel like they're going to like kind of fill in some of the blanks on some of their supporting cast, and those two seem like viable contenders for that. So I think we'll see some more of that, and I think we're going to see some more of the real world, the world above this like memory inception thing that's going on, where Anton Lesser is carrying out all kinds of nefarious deeds. I think we're maybe going to see someone wake up and see more of that. I don't know, but I feel like I want to see more of that, because that seems like a really big plot point. So let's get into the episode and see what I thought of it.
Hey you. Yeah. You. Do you like $18.99? Well, as well as these breakdown videos, we also do theories, unanswered questions, and plenty more. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The episode opens with Ike's family not having a good time, Konrad.
No, I think that's fair to say. They are getting a little hot under the collar.
Oh, hot everywhere, actually. Cause...
You might say. Okay, well, yes. Yeah, that hot first under the collar, or really under the feet, actually, based on where the fire starts, and then hot everywhere else as they burn to death horrifically.
Did you predict it, Konrad? Did you predict it?
What, that they would burn?
Yeah.
Or just in... I mean, I had an inkling in the back of my head that Andreas Peachman was a character who was harbouring some baggage, let's say. Like, you don't look at a man like that with his drinking habit and think he's doing fine. Like, he had some problems.
Yeah.
So, this opening is... I wrote down, I'm not going to keep doing this, listeners. I promise I'm not going to keep doing this. But I did write down, as soon as we found ourselves in the forest, I was like, I wonder if that's the same forest they shot Dark in. But based on nothing. Based on absolutely nothing. But yeah, we get a child singing an eerie German folk song, which keeps returning throughout the episode. Mm-hmm. I did note that, although I will admit my comprehension of German is very remedial, in this verse that is sung here, which wasn't subtitled, so I just kind of had to pick out bits, it's something about, like, no men can help and a hunter shooting something is what they're talking about, which sounds like it has the makings of a nursery rhyme. That, you know, there's always hunters doing stuff, killing wolves and whatever.
Cried wolf.
So that sounds, yeah, exactly. So that sounds like a traditional nursery rhyme. And I did note, maybe it's got more than one verse, but I did note that later in the episode, when this comes back and we do get it subtitled, the subtitles are talking about something completely else, something completely different, that is much more, like, thematically in keeping with the show. Yeah, so I wonder if they, like, wrote a second verse or something for the bit that we do hear the lyrics to.
Well, I think, I think that is a German, I don't know, folk song, nursery song. I don't really nursery rhyme. I don't really know much about it, to be honest with you, but I do know that, I don't even know if you're aware of this, Konrad, but the first 2 episodes of 1899 actually aired at the Toronto Film Festival. After they aired, that was back in September. So after they aired at the Toronto Film Festival, there was, like, a load of people posting, like, no spoilers of this song, and apparently I think this song is probably something that a lot of Germans know, you know. So I didn't even know. Do you, when you first heard this in the forest, were you translating this from your own German ability?
Yeah. So that's where, this might be completely wrong, but I heard something about Jaegers and Schießen, which is, like, hunters shooting stuff, and like, I think I heard something about no man can help. So that was me just kind of picking out what I could hear. And then obviously much later in the episode we do get Nina's we get in the subtitles what Nina's actually saying, which is completely different. So I do think that maybe they wrote a second verse for it or something. That's
also it might just have 2 verses.
Like, I mean, it could do.
If it's a nursery rhyme, I know what you mean. Nursery rhymes don't usually have more than one.
A second verse. But if it's a little folk song, it's preposterous.
If it's a little folk song, that's what it might be. Because I seem to remember now. I don't know why I'm spoiling this for you. It's not really spoiling, but the song that the people were like linking that this is, I think, was like 2 minutes long. So it might actually.
Oh, okay.
It might have something to do with that. So anyway, house burns, family burns from within. Ike clearly not happy about that.
No, we see the band, the ribbon rather that Ike found on the Prometheus.
With his daughter's, it's in his daughter's hair.
It's in Nina's hair. Which it doesn't make a lot of sense why that's on the Prometheus. Like based on what we've seen here, to be honest. So further fuel for the speculative fire, if you'll forgive the pun.
That's a good point, actually, because what on earth was it doing on that Prometheus?
Exactly, almost as if it wasn't real. Yeah. But, who can say?
Exactly. So then Mora. Well, I'm assuming. I don't assume Konrad's an idiot on this podcast, folks. So you might view me as leading him down the road here. I usually try not to, but Mora says wake up, and then Ike wakes up. I think you probably put together that was Mora. Unless you actually had the dub on again.
No. Yeah, some random American woman this time. Actually, no, Mora is just spoken, it's the same actress.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's told to wake up by Mora, which is interesting because that is the same thing her dad said to her in the first episode that woke her from her stupor. So, her slumber, let's say. Which implies... I don't know how... I still haven't fully wrapped my head around the whole dream escape thing that's going on here, but I'm fairly certain, as is expanded on in this episode, that there must be some kind of dreaming or memory like exploration going on here because of the different levels of like reality, I guess, that we see.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mora is the one telling Ike to wake up makes me wonder whether we're doing a thing where like Ike is in his own dream that exists within Mora's dream that exists inside the overworld where Mora's dad is up to no good. I don't like. I've not got a huge amount of evidence to support that, but it just seems odd to me that it's Mora's voice telling him to wake up when it was her dad, who we know to be like complicit in whatever weird experiment he's doing, who told Mora to wake up in the first episode.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. One thing I was going to say as well here is the speculation you're having in terms of who's telling everyone to wake up there. I mean, it's not really any problem to say this. Whenever I first watched this episode, my immediate thought was when that happened, does that mean we're going to get like this is like Ike's episode? And then I assumed, now I'm not going to tell you what actually happens, but what I assumed when I first heard it was that Ike was going to tell whoever the next person's episode was to wake up in the next one. You know what I mean? It was going to be like a pass the baton.
Yeah. This kind of daisy chaining of people telling everyone else to wake up.
Yeah. That's what I assumed. Yeah. That's what I like when I first heard that. I was like, oh, very nice, very nice. Also, I know you're going to keep mentioning dreamscapes and all that sort of thing. We all listen. Anyone listening to this podcast, most of us anyway, have probably seen it before. There was one person in the comments said they were being a Konrad. I couldn't believe that. After all this time, there's still someone who's chugging away the Konrad train.
Oh, I respect him. Come on in. The water's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that most people listen to the podcast have already seen the show, so therefore they understand that when you're telling people to wake up and stuff, and there does seem to be something going on in terms of sleeping. If the main thing of your show is to tell people to wake up, you don't have to explain to us every time why you think that you're thinking that way. You know what I mean? So anyway, he does wake up.
He does.
He's startled. Obviously he's had a nightmare about his family burning. He goes over and tries to drink, but his little flask is empty. He grabs the bottle. He starts chugging it down, and then a knock on the door from Conor McGregor. Now you were, you were.
I did see the comment from Vic Disco saying he's more like Conor McGregor. I will accept that. I've mixed and matched Conor McGregor with Beard Simon Pegg in the notes for this episode to keep things fresh.
I mean, he does look like Conor. Let's be honest with you.
He does.
So he gives him a little message that has apparently come from the company, which says "sink ship."
A very vague telegram, I think. A worryingly vague telegram. I know that it's probably difficult to send long messages that cut that kind of distance, but when there's two ships in play, you should probably specify which one you mean.
Just immediately start hacking at the Kerberos.
Yeah, what would happen if he was just like, well, company's orders, and just like goes to the bottom of the Kerberos and takes out the big plug at the bottom of the ship or whatever.
Go and get the fellas from the Titanic. Come on, lads, play us out. Just standing at the edge.
Yeah,
I mean that would be great. That would be great. That's the end of the show, and then the rest of it is just plays out until the credits. All right, so the compasses are all messed up as well. This is now as we go through this show, one of the so I suppose criticisms of the show. Now the show has been very positively received. As well as that, it was also like number one on Netflix for the TV shows for like at least a week. So we're looking like season 2 and 3 are looking hopeful at the minute. But I will say to you, one of the criticisms I have seen around, I'm not saying I agree with it, is that the show does have some tropes, okay? So a trope here, I suppose, first one I would see is if tricksy business is going on, that means the compasses don't work. That's a very big trope in a sort of a mysterious type show,
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I mean, it's a trope in service of like mood building. I think unless. I guess maybe like because they're where they're heading by the end of this episode, I suppose it's possible that it develops into, oh no, we're lost at sea because the compass is screwed up, and it becomes like a plot point rather than just something to emphasize how weird the situation is, as if it's not already obvious with a ship that has clearly risen from the bottom of the sea for some reason. But yeah, it didn't bother me too much. And like, to be honest, like when I first saw it, I was more busy thinking, is the implication that they've only just noticed this now, or has it happened after bringing aboard the 2 people from the Prometheus? That's kind of what I like, because it seems like the kind of
thing. Well, they brought aboard one of them. Are you the guy who is like the sort of the wet man?
Daniel.
So he came aboard. He wasn't brought aboard.
Well, yeah, I mean, but 2 people have come aboard from
specificity, Konrad. That's what the people
want.
One
with leave, one with not. One with not, one without. But yeah, 2 people from the Prometheus have come aboard, and I feel like the crew would probably notice if the compass started going nuts.
Yeah.
Fairly quickly. So I guess the implication, unless I've misunderstood it, is that it's only just started happening now, which which seems odd.
There would always be people on the bridge, I suppose. As well as that, my wife Ema said to me one time, which was really interesting, was there's a language to film, and sometimes filmmakers do something because it puts the viewer in a certain mood. So you are right that this compass is going mad does put the viewer in the mood of, okay, they're up the creek without a paddle here. They need they've no way to get out at the minute. They're sort of stuck, and that puts you in that mood straight away. It's a bit like the way what Ema said one time was, even before historically, it would have been white wedding dresses traditionally. In films, they still put white on the bride in medieval times and stuff, because the audience knows straight away it's a wedding. So it's maybe something
it's
like that.
It's part of the visual language.
Yeah, the visual language of film. We all know about it here. Okay, so that's good. That's good. We get the title card, The Boy. It's called The Boy. We'll focus on The Boy. Now they're sort of doing a sort of, I suppose, a little Friends thing, like the type of shows which have the same like sort of like the one with this one's like it's the ship, and then it's the boy. They're doing everything's the. Friends didn't invent that, let's be honest, but it is what my mind went to.
Can someone recut the opening to 1899 with the Rembrandt's theme song?
It could be Mates, ship mates.
That'd be great.
I remember
but we need to get like set photos of like the cast looking happy, because no one ever looks happy in this show.
Yeah. Not so far anyway, except for Clemence in that very small moment. Have that as like the main thing,
that's the only thing. I just keep repeating that over and over again.
Pretty sure there was an Australian skit called Mates back in the day, but I can't remember even what it was on. But anyway, so Mora is snooping around in the boy's possessions.
Yes.
Goes over and opens his little bag, or in his jacket, I think. Jacket finds a ring, and then also looks at the pyramid as well. And to top it all off, kind of feels like he knew it was happening the whole time, because when she leaves, he opens his eyes.
Yeah, I still think that they should have killed this monster, this monstrous child. The ring is interesting because I don't know for a fact, but in the previous episode, Mora had a flash, like a precognition or a recognition or whatever it was, of a hand with a what looked like a wedding band on the ring finger, and now she finds what I presume is it, because why would you set up there's a hand with a ring on it and then have a completely unrelated ring in the next episode? So I presume it's the same ring, and she finds it in this boy's possession. Now, to me, from what I gleaned, I didn't pause on that shot in the first episode, so maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but it looked like an adult's hand to me. It didn't look like a child's hand wearing it, which, although I'm just going to refer back to my theory matrix for a second. Yeah, so I'm not sure about my theory from the first episode that the boy who came aboard the boy capitalized and Daniel are the same person. I'm starting to waver a bit on that, but if it was indeed shown on an adult's hand, I guess maybe that lends a bit of credibility to that, because if it's an adult's ring, then I guess they're implying that the adult who will wear this ring is also involved with Mora in some way at the moment.
Okay, all right. Interesting.
The whistling as well. That's the one thing I wanted to mention. It keeps coming back in this episode. Yeah, but it's like subtitled, so I think it's supposed to be happening, and I guess it's potentially just in practical terms, it's probably a member of the crew whistling because there's fog and they're trying to draw attention to themselves in case something comes and hears them or collides with them. I guess that's what that whistle is for. I'm not a naval officer. I don't know these things.
What are the subtitles saying? Is this square brackets whistling sort of thing for
it's like a high pitched whistling or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I read that as part of. I read that when I first heard it as part of the score. You know what I mean?
Maybe actually, now I think about it, maybe it is.
But the way it was subtitled is quite strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I read it as diegetic, like as it's happening in in what we're seeing, or it wouldn't be diegetic because it's not actually produced on set. But like, I read it as like in world the noise is happening, but it's very, very, very kind of poignantly only used at moments of tension that seem to involve this boy in some way. But it's a really cool way of, very much like how they've done in other shows where each character has like a theme. It seems like they're playing around with different sounds to tell you who is kind of the focus of a scene. Yeah,
it's really cool, and that's something that has great success in the past. Whenever I think about that style of score, with like, a character theme which always is present, I always think about the Joker in The Dark Knight. The long cello note, I think it is. It's really cool. Okay, so then we're in the engine room. A bit of questioning of Oleg, what's going on that boat. Then we have these two like sort of Laurel and Hardy type
comedy
figures.
Double act is what we've got.
This is literally one of the only pieces of levity in the whole show.
Yeah, it is. I feel like that's why it's here, because it's just like a little palate cleanser to be like, we know you've probably watched 2 episodes back to back because you're a fan of this show, so you're not going to watch one and stop unless you're in my position. So they're like, here's a little bit of comedy for everyone.
A little bit of comedy.
Talking about wolves.
Yeah, so they were talking about what would kill 1,000 people, maybe wolves. And then they're like, maybe one big wolf. And then maybe the boy is a wolf. It really goes downhill very quickly.
I've already stated my skepticism of that young boy, so I'm sure there's a double meaning in him being referred to as a big wolf.
The big wolf.
I think he should be treated as a wolf would and thrown overboard for the sea to claim.
Oh my god! What's that big wolf from mythology called?
Fenrir, I think, is the Norse one. Right?
Yeah, when I first watched this and they were talking about a big wolf, I was like, Fenrir.
Yeah, we'll get the Midgard Somna or whatever it's called, like the worm that circles the encircles the word.
I mean, that'd be fantastic. All right, so Ike comes down, basically gives Oleg a little task to do, wants him to find out how much coal they've got. So Ike seems to be on the precipice of making a big decision here, and we'll find out by the end of the episode what exactly that decision is. But he wants to know how much power they've got, basically.
Yeah, how much juice is left in the tank?
Yeah, how much juice?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ike and Mora now. So Mora is walking through the corridor. Ike comes across her, and then starts asking her things like, "Did you experience something strange?"
Yeah, I love that question. Like, did you experience anything strange aboard the previously sunken ship that has risen from the depths, where we found a creepy ghost boy barred inside a cupboard with a black pyramid in his possession? Anything strange at all, Mora?
She's like, no,
totally normal.
Yeah, totally.
Like, what do you expect her to say, Ike? The whole thing was weird. It doesn't. You're gonna have to be more specific.
Right. So then he starts hearing the song again. Oh, he actually tells her that he's heard and seen his family, and then and then he hears the song again, and he sort of just walks off, and Mora can't hear it. Is an interesting thing. So only he can hear it. And
I think it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah, because she can't hear it, and it's also the very obvious solution to the problem of Ike seemingly starting to feel like he's maybe going insane is later. I won't go into it too much now, but obviously later in the episode he finds a literal not tunnel. I guess it is a tunnel. I felt like there was a different word for like a vertical tunnel, a shaft. I guess shaft. Yeah. He finds like a shaft to somewhere else that we'll get into later, and he doesn't show that to anyone. Which I was like, okay, if that was actually real and practically there, you just be like, look at the hole in the floor with the bricks. Like, I'm not going mad.
There's bricks in this boat.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah, maybe he should have shown someone that if it is real. That does lend.
Well, I think the fact he didn't is like, okay, all right, I understand what we're doing here.
Okay, so there's a few little very short bits here. One is the Danish family starts to pray, talking about protecting us from evil and stuff, and then while they're saying that, it sort of overdubs a scene of Angel and Ramiro.
Yes. cuts to Ramiro sleeping when talking about falseness in the world, which is I think if you didn't pick up that Ramiro isn't the priest that he is dressed as in the first episode, then this is them kind of beating you over the head with it and saying he's lying. Yeah. He's not a priest.
Yeah. I think it also you're exactly right, but also whenever it like focuses on the crucifix itself and the rosary beads, it sort of implies to me as well that some sort of comment that like there's like different factions of Christianity here, and like it's sort of implying themes of different people interpret things in different ways for me as well.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. I would assume at this point, I don't actually know what the sort of Catholic population in Denmark is like, but I would assume it's more Protestant, given it's like northern Europe, as opposed to the Iberian Peninsula where Catholicism is much more popular. So yeah, different sort of sections of Christianity who potentially don't agree with each other on a lot.
Yeah. Well, obviously, according to this show, 100% Danish people are Protestants. But anyway, so then we get a name for the very wet. I'm going to say it, Welshman. Because there is a little twang there. Konrad, I don't know if he picked it up. He's got a little.
I actually didn't notice that. I was expecting him to be French, if I'm honest, because he played. I'm fairly sure it was this actor played a French character in 1917.
Oh really? I think he might have been that. Yeah.
The French. He was like the French guy who is with them the whole time and then gets left behind in a pretty heavy-handed metaphor from Christopher Nolan. But
Christopher Nolan didn't.
Not 1917. Dunkirk's what I'm talking about. I was getting that.
Yes. I was like, he wasn't. He wasn't in that.
No, but he played. He played a French character in that. I assume, and because he barely speaks, I assumed he was French. And then he starts speaking in this, and I was like, wait a second. I had to like reconfigure my brain to be like, no, that's not French. What are we dealing with here?
You got the dub on. You got the dub on again. Yeah. So he's actually Welsh, and to be honest with you, he's got a Welsh accent which is quite subtle, and then every now and then it's a little bit of that velvety Welsh comes out, a bit of the Tom Jones, reminds me of those.
Mama told me not to come. That's what we're gonna get from Daniel in the next episode, hopefully.
I mean, he's trying to get Mora's attention, isn't he? And yeah, he doesn't seem to be able to. So I imagine next episode he's just gonna be standing in the corridor going, "Spy on me, baby, you." He'll get her. So anyway, so he's trying to get into Mora's room here, and then she sort of sees him, and he's like, "Oh, I heard some rustling around in there." And then she's like, asks, "Have we met before?" She seems to recognize him potentially. You look familiar, and then he says, "I don't think so." So
I think the answer to that is probably yes, but not at this point. Like I think if my theory about this being some kind of cyclical memory experiment is true, I'm sure she has. Well, I mean, I think based on Ike being told to wake up in this episode, and also what he's being subjected to or seeing in this episode, I think he's experiencing the same kind of thought experiment or memory thing as Mora, and I think Daniel probably is as well, though maybe he is taking a more active role in it. I've got some thoughts on this a bit later, to do with Daniel and Mrs. Wilson, as maybe people who are within this memory experiment, but who are conscious that they are in it and are playing parts to make certain things happen, to move events along or something like that. But I feel like Daniel and Moira, I mean, Daniel obviously knows Moira. Like, it couldn't be more obvious. Well, actually, no, that's not true. It could be more obvious, and it gets more obvious later in this episode. But
what about the fact that he was trying to get into a room?
That's fine.
Do you think he knows? Does he know the boys there?
Yes, I mean, like the eyes that he makes at the boy. The boy's like sat up as the door closes, and they might as well fucking wink at each other for how much. But the thing that I don't fully understand, and maybe this is me misunderstanding actually, like with the function of it, but he's got his like deployable lock picking beetle, and I don't know why he didn't use it on that door, because he's used it everywhere else that he's needed to get through.
That's true, actually. Is there more than one beetle is my question, because at this stage in the show I was like, but hang on, he uses the beetle, to get into his room, or what turns into his room, but and we also were told that not all the rooms are full in this episode, so that sort of explains why he didn't walk in on someone in the bath or something. But then, but also on the Prometheus, the beetle was leading them to the boy. So
yeah, that's a good point. I went back and forth on that, like with the Ava stuff that happens a bit later. I was like, is this the same beetle that we've just seen? And then it became very obvious that it was. But I think there probably must be more than one, because the one on the Prometheus was definitely not the same as the one that Daniel was using to get into his room at the end of the last episode.
Unless
it's very fast.
Yeah, it's very well. It does kind of hint towards your theory that they're the same person, though, because it means that he carried the beetle with him for years.
The double Beatles, yeah.
The same beetle.
Yeah, it's like a Toy Story situation that's going on with that boy and that beetle.
Right where you left him.
Looking forward to the Randy Newman montage that's going to come up in the show a little bit
from
later.
The bottom of my heart. Right, okay. Maura and the boy in the room. Now, I haven't actually, to be honest with you, given much thought to the symbolism of her offering him an apple.
Yeah.
Anytime you've got sort of some sort of religion / mythology being referenced to, and then there's an apple very clearly offered to someone, my synapses start blinking away there, to be honest with you. I haven't actually given too much thought to that yet, but anyway, she offers him an apple. He gets the pyramid and gives it to Maura again,
refusing to talk very, very pointedly. He's like, I can't answer your questions, I'm just going to hand you this pyramid again, and hopefully you'll figure it out at some point, as if it's obvious what the solution is. I'm sure it will be at some point in the future, but right now it's like, what are you doing? What do you want me to do with this?
Yeah, exactly. And we have the high-pitched tone again as well.
Yes. What else? Oh, actually, so one thing I did notice in this scene, which I thought I'd mention now, this was the really big undermining of the Daniel and boy are the same person theory, was that they don't have the same eye color, which hasn't been an issue before for
redacted.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that in a video already, actually, about that, because there was two characters in Dark who one played the older version of another, and they had different color eyes. We have many theories in our old podcast about why that may be. It all comes down to, of course, just casting, but at the same time, we have a lot of great theories, just so check it out.
Yeah. So it wasn't an issue then, and I'm not gonna let it deter me now. I'm gonna, whatever. We'll figure it out. He's been underwater or something. I don't know what he's been up to. Like, he's changed his eye colors because he was in the sea for so long or something.
I mean, I'll go with it. I think so. The boy has what color eyes?
His are really blue or grey. They're very light coloured. And then Daniel has dark brown eyes.
Like babies' eyes can change in the first few months of life. So are we gonna say that this boy is only 2 months old?
Yeah, he's a baby.
Yeah.
Babies are born with hair. He's just a really big baby.
Yeah. 100%.
Your son is 80 pounds.
I mean, to be honest with you, all the clues are there for that, because he doesn't speak. So
yeah.
He just hasn't learned to yet.
No, exactly. I'm gonna not to belabor the ship metaphor, but I'm gonna ride that one to the bottom of the ocean. I'm convinced they're the same person until proven otherwise.
All right, fair enough. Okay, Ada is washing her brother Cresta. Talking about the boy. Ada knows an awful lot on this ship.
Yes, she's aware of a lot. She seems like exposition central, this girl.
Yeah, Basil exposition. Yeah.
But it's a bit of kind of character building here, with Ada broaching the subject of wanting to go to school to become a doctor, and the reality of her family situation being confirmed, which is, it's just kind of rounding out her character before maybe something bad happens to her at the end of this episode, and they want to have you on side with the character and feeling sympathetic for her before that happens.
Yeah, because we all know, you don't get free empathy when you kill a kid in the show. You need to build them up. People when they see kids getting killed never care about it, really. It's only when you actually hear them talking to their brother that you build that empathy for them. So anyways,
I would have felt nothing for her had it not been for this scene.
So basically, they Cresta then just says, "I'll go and annoy Tova for a while." So off she pops. In comes Angel. You're a very difficult man to find, he says. And he gifts him his little cigarette box.
Yes.
Not a great gift, I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, it's very ornate.
It's probably worth money,
thing.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the nicest thing Cresta briefly owns.
Yeah.
Before Tova comes in and ruins it. But Angel has learned Cresta's name,
yes.
Which is going to make him easier to find, one would assume, in future.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is a certain element of like the upper classes feeling like they can take what they want from anyone from like a lower social strata than them here, which is very interesting. Angel's there's a couple of characters in this episode, Angel being one, and Lucien being the other, who kind of are in like a race to see who can be the biggest shit, which I'm interested to see how that unfolds, because they're neck and neck at the moment in this episode, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, you've said all you need to there. The other thing is that Tova does come in, sort of spoils the party. Cresta hides the little box for now, but she says this to Cresta. She says, "You swore to me, Cresta." What do you think that means?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess like the obvious answer is like not to act on his sexual urges, like maybe he's gay or bi as well. But to be honest, like looking at the interactions between Cresta and Angel up to this point, I can't yet tell like how receptive Cresta is to Angel's advances. Like he seems to tolerate it, but I don't know if I'd say he is actively interested, and maybe it's based on like the power dynamic of their classes. It might be genuine interest and he's just like kind of a bit more nervous. But yeah, I guess the obvious answer is that, you know, his sister knows that he's gay or bi or whatever, and for some reason he's promised not to act on those urges. Although I don't know why. Yeah, it's a very like kind of, it's a very mysterious state.
They're very religious, aren't they? So
they are very religious.
That
so I
would
guess
sort
it
of
could
imply
just be...
that 1899, very religious family, you know, promised, you know, to respect God from now on. I thought, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that definitely checks out. I suppose it's more like she doesn't necessarily seem super religious. Like I feel like her mum and dad are the ones who've been really presented as like the religious, the hyper religious ones. But maybe we just haven't seen enough of Tova yet to get a sense of that.
But I think as well at that time, the idea of being gay,
that's true, yeah,
or bi, even if you weren't religious, the world was so ingrained with that religion or that sort of moral framework that they would have potentially, you know, tried to make someone stop doing that, even if they weren't that religious themselves. Maybe it's
probably going to be a scandal at the very least, which the family don't want. So yeah, it probably just is that. I'm probably just overthinking it, to be honest.
Okay, so we get Ike and Conor McGregor again here. Now Conor McGregor, I think, you know, we'll keep with the Conor McGregor, but the character's name is Sebastian. Just to let, I know there's someone ready to type there. So there's someone. You know, I'm a YouTube viewer myself. I know the urge. To type.
Just settle down. All right, we know the name. Yeah. I don't actually. I've literally never written that name down.
Have you forgotten it already? What was it?
Sebastian.
Oh, he got it.
Okay. Yeah, I had to think for a second though.
Yeah, maybe this is actually an allegory to what do you call it, Little Mermaid? But anyway,
Little Mermaid. Yeah.
So okay, so it's talking about like the idea that this is sort of mentioning a couple of things, like the ships have been bought,
yes,
by English, but they kept half the crew German. Did you notice?
Yeah. So they were sold to an English company a couple of months ago, but they kept the German crew, which they were like kind of grateful for. And they say they're half empty in terms of passengers. They have no freight, which obviously means they're not generating any profit. And the big question kind of underpinning this whole scene is, why are these ships running if they are generating no profit? Now, that's a good question, but based on, and I'm sure that will be kind of addressed in the context of what is happening on these ships.
Yeah.
But with my theory of this kind of all happening on like within a memory or a dream or something like that, I think this is misdirection. I think this is them. I think this is the writers being like, we're going to make you think about these things, which are, you know, issues for the crew, but it's an attempt at distraction from the fact that maybe none of this is actually happening the way it, or maybe none of this happened the way it is happening here, because this is all being constructed within the minds of the people whose dream or memory it is. That's my, like, whenever they started talking like this, I was like, come on. You're gonna have to wake up a little earlier than that to catch old Konrad out with this kind of misdirection.
Yeah, who cares about the freight? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
yeah.
fair enough. All right, okay. I see where your brain's going. I'm liking it. We do find out now. This is the biggest revelation for me in this episode. Forget about what happens at the very end. Forget about the Beetle and Ava. The biggest revelation for me is that Lucien is a weeaboo.
Yeah. He loves Japan. Like,
he caught a few episodes of Dragon Ball Z as a kid. He couldn't get enough.
Yeah, who didn't? Who didn't? But well, I mean, we say that, but at the same time, he can't tell the difference between. Admittedly, she's in quite heavy makeup, dressed as a geisha and all that, but he can't tell the difference between a Japanese woman and a Chinese woman, apparently, because he just takes at face value that she is Japanese.
Well, yeah, obviously we know, because at the time he would have not been exposed, all that sort of thing. But it is funny because he loves Japanese culture so much.
Yeah,
that he's probably never really seen a Japanese person in real life. He has only ever read about them.
He's just seen like Madame Butterfly. Well, I don't think Madame Butterfly was actually written at this point, but he's seen some horrifically Orientalist stage play, and it's like, that place seems good.
Yeah,
they've got paper walls. But it turns out he was probably flirting with her, which I like. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, it's nice that someone's being nice to Ling Yi, even though Lucien seems like he might be a bit of a dick. And then it only lasts for about 30 seconds before it's like, oh, I think he's flirting with her. Actually, this is okay. This character is not. It has very few redeeming qualities by the look of things.
Yeah, okay. Mrs. Wilson, you mentioned her earlier. She comes in.
Yeah.
Well, Yukja, first of all, who seems to be Ling Yi's servant, takes Ling Yi away. Then Mrs. Wilson comes in and basically offers Ling Yi to Lucien. And Lucien here sort of, he first of all thinks that it's Mrs. Wilson offering herself.
He does, which is a bit presumptuous.
And I thought it was very rude, to be honest with you, his response.
Yeah, it was. But it was funny, this, because I did kind of joke about how Mrs. Wilson was maybe a human trafficker in the last episode. And then in this one, it's like, oh, maybe she actually is a human trafficker, because she's sort of, offering up Ling Yi to maybe pay for her passage or something like that. She's willing to sell her out.
Well, I will say, when you said that last week, I did think to myself, based on what happens in this episode, if you did put that in the theory matrix, I was like, he probably could argue with me later about that one. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's not in there at the moment, but again, that's one that
we can retrospectively put stuff in.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll see how I'm doing on the points by the end of the season. See if I need the score. But so it's very, very callous though, and this is the point where I was like, maybe the fact that Mrs. Wilson is so familiar. Well, okay, no, there's two things here that made me think this. This being that Mrs. Wilson is in a similar position to Daniel, where maybe she is inside the thought experiment or the memory experiment, but she is also complicit in the conducting of the experiment. She's present in the waking world as well. And the reason I thought that was, in the first episode, obviously there's the weird moment where she drinks from a teacup and everyone else drinks from a teacup. That is completely unaddressed and completely unexplained, and I'm sure will make sense at some point down the line, but to me implies that she has some control over all the other people on this ship. And kind of, I guess, following on from that is that she is in the know about a lot of things, that a lot of the goings on of the passengers of this ship in a way that is believable. Maybe she's just a bit of a busybody and she catches gossip and stuff like that, but I think is actually speaking of a greater knowledge of the people who are involved in this experiment. She knows there's the French couple, Lucien and, is it Clemence? He knows that they're having marital problems, and he knows about Ling Yi's masquerade as a Japanese geisha. I think she might be in a similar position to Daniel, where she's more than she seems.
Okay, all right. Interesting to me. There's also another fella who seems to be more than he seems, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's Jérôme. Jérôme sneaks into the French people's room It is interesting to note that the French room is, for all those number files out there, 2101. 2101, not binary, of course, but...
Is that binary? Yep.
yeah, but 2101 leaves a medal there, and then hides under the bed when Clemence comes back, eventually gets out.
Yeah, so he leaves. I think it's the Legion of Honor is what that medal's called. It's like the French equivalent of like the Medal of
Purple
Honor
Heart?
in the US, or like the Victor. No, the Purple Heart's for getting injured. Like the Medal of Honor
okay.
is like the highest distinction you can get, and then it's like the Victoria Cross in the UK, basically, like the highest distinction.
Yeah, Victoria Cross, yeah.
Yeah, so it's called the Legion of Honor, which means that either he or Lucien has performed some act of military heroism, and now. This is actually I didn't really think about it when it happened, but given you've mentioned sort of tropey storytelling or tropey devices earlier on, this is a bit of a trope, like because the sort of the storyline of one character seeking out another to return a medal, particularly a prestigious one, is kind of shorthand for, oh, these two served together and parted company on traumatic terms, and this one has sought revenge or some kind of some kind of absolution, and this is the representation of it. Like I don't hate it because it's like got that layer of abstraction because it's a French medal and we don't necessarily know exactly what it means unless you're familiar with French military medals, but I feel like this is quite a common storytelling technique for this kind of character drama that we're going to get here. But
okay,
I don't mind it too much, and I think it like my assumption is that Lucien was in command of Jerome during some military action and like abandoned him or otherwise displayed some cowardice that Jerome is seeking to right. And I actually looked it up because I was like, I'm pretty sure the Boxer Rebellion happened at some point around this time, which was like a rebellion in China that a bunch of European powers, being the colonial nightmares that they were like, oh no, we're not having that, thank you very much, and went and like quite brutally put that down. So I did look it up, and the Boxer Rebellion did happen in 1899 in northern China. So I saw that and I was like, okay, I'm fairly sure that they were serving together during the Boxer Rebellion or something like that. So that's a theory I've got as well.
Okay, I'm going to sort of rein you in a bit there, Konrad, because in the past you have went very specific. I'm just going to let the audience know I am going to give you that if it does come to pass that they were served together. That counts as a point, all right? Let's forget about the specific war.
I think I might have put them as separate. I put them as separate theories, so you're all right.
Okay.
I've got they served together, and then they fought together in the Boxer Rebellion. So I've double dipped on that theory, which may end up coming back to bite me.
Yeah, it could be a double
Rebellion
loss.
is never mentioned. Yeah, double loss. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next scene is the crew discussing the fact that they should have got rid of or replaced the captain earlier on. They think he's sort of losing his marbles. Basically, they sort of Franz anyway, who's the guy who was in Dark season 3.
John Moxley.
Yeah, John Moxley. He seems to empathize a bit with the captain and say, like, anyone who went through something like he went through, shouldn't be able to come back to work. Should have been replaced. So we see the beginnings of the crew maybe losing a bit of faith.
Yeah, I think they really want you throughout this episode, and certainly by the end of this episode, they want you to have a feeling that both the crew and the passengers have completely turned on Ike, and he's maybe not long for his position as captain.
Okay, all right, interesting. Talking of Ike, we're up to his vision now. So I say vision. I don't even know what it is. It's sort of an experience. We'll call it the experience.
The Ike family experience. That's what it is.
Yeah. I'll call it an adventure. To quote Weird Border Zoo, is an adventure now. It always was. Okay, so so Ike starts seeing the visions again. Opens the door. Sort of when he walks through the door, he's now in his family home. The song is there again. This is the point with the lyrics. Did you write down those other lyrics? His daughter singing the song.
I didn't write them down, but I got the gist of them.
Which seemed to me like about work and work is futile. I didn't really actually write them down either, but it was nice.
So they're about
symbolic.
like thoughts being free and like minds tearing down walls and stuff like that, which is what made me think, based on my admittedly not great German skills, that this was a verse that they wrote for the show as opposed to the first verse we heard earlier, which sounded a lot more like a nursery rhyme with hunters and people.
Yeah, so maybe
like
they changed the lyrics to fit the show, and they're the same tune as the nursery rhyme.
Yeah, that was my thinking. I could be completely wrong. Maybe it's just a weird second verse, but that was my thought. One thing I did notice here as well that I thought was really interesting, talking about elements of the score that are maybe used to convey certain things happening, is that as soon as Ike kind of crosses the threshold of the creepily opening door and transports himself to this memory, there's like a sound of like electricity arcing or like static.
Ooh, okay.
Which sounds like, to me, was like, okay, I feel like all of these sounds, there's a lot of them in this episode. I'm sure there was a lot in the first episode that I just missed, and I'm starting to pick up on them in this episode. But I feel like all of these sounds are the kind of thing where I'm going to look back maybe at the end of the first season on these and be like, okay, every time there was an instance of this happening, something was happening to their sleeping body in the waking world, or something like that. Like something like they're having like electrotherapy or something. You know, they're having electricity pass through their body or their brain to stimulate a thought or something along those lines. Because it was really pronounced, and it didn't happen again at all in this episode. So it seemed important.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I know what you mean. Like, there's a lot of different sounds. Sort of, even sometimes the sounds. Now, again, what I'm going to say here, I don't mean to make a hint either way, okay? But I thought some of the sounds, even in the trailers, were like almost paranormal. You know what I mean? Like a sort of otherworldliness to them that they're trying to get you thinking there. Okay, so Vision. I assume Vision. I don't know. Adventure. He goes in there. His family burns to death again. He's now standing in his burnt house. A little beetle appears for him. He follows it up the chimney, and he climbs up a shaft and into his room. There's a little hatch under his bed.
Yes. Actually, there's 2 points I want to make here about the sort of end of this scene with his family burning, and then the passage. Actually, it's more to do with the conversation he has with Nina. So I can't find an answer in my head as to why Nina is the only child he seems truly heartbroken to have lost. Maybe this is going to be visited. Maybe it's going to be expanded on. He's going to talk about his other daughters later. But there are 2 other children in this room, and we don't even know their names, and he doesn't even look at them. Maybe he just didn't like them. That's a possibility as well. Like, Nina was the apple of his eye. The other 2 were all right. It was like, well, whatever. I don't care. So. That's it. That's something I'm definitely keeping an eye on because it's interesting. The other thing that I have to point out here, because it would be remiss of me not to, is that, as Anthony has pointed out, I'm liable to occasionally go on really deep dives into things that are completely incorrect, and I feel like it's important for me to own up when this happens. And in the sequence where he's talking to Nina, and Nina's talking about her mum, and says the dreams are back, you have to let them go. Talking about Ike, and if you're lucky, he'll wash back into your arms with the next tide. But I completely misinterpreted that sentence as if she was talking about a 4th child. Like, she was telling Ike, you have to let them go. And if you're lucky, he'll wash back into your arms with the next tide. I was like, oh, he's got a son that he hasn't mentioned. And I literally paused the episode and was like writing things down for like 10 minutes, and then pressed play and like rewound a bit and watched it again. I was like, oh no, she was just talking about the them in this was Ike, and they were talking about him being washed back into his wife's house. So a complete waste of everyone's time.
Well, no, just your time, really. I didn't.
Well, that's true. I've wasted everyone's time now by regaling them with it.
I know they're enjoying it, Konrad. Don't worry. Okay, fair enough. And what was your thoughts on the little shaft?
So that's definitely not real. Is my like, that's not in the boat. There's just no way. And like the whole Beatles situation as well. The whistle starts playing towards the end of this scene as well, as he's like emerging through the shaft back into his bedroom. It's just it's got the pyramid icon on it, which it turns up in a lot of places. The little kind of upside down pyramid with its tip submerged in the ground.
It's 2D, so it's triangle, but okay.
All right, triangle. Okay, I mean, listen. I'm assuming the triangle icon has something to do with the weird obsidian pyramid. Call me crazy, but like I feel like maybe they have something to do with each
I don't
other.
see the connection.
Imagine if there was none. Imagine it was completely separate.
Okay, so so you think that's not real? Fair enough. Maybe at a later date. I don't really want to do it this episode, but at a later date I might pin you down a little bit more in terms of the specifics of what you mean by that. Obviously you think it's not in the boat. I think it's fair enough to say that there isn't a forest in a boat.
It's in the forest floor.
Yeah,
the forest. It's between where the Danish people are and where the rich people are. There's like a whole like arboretum of just trees within the ship's hull.
That's brilliant. Right. Okay. Mora and the boy again. They are in. This is really interesting, actually. So basically, Mora's telling one of the most horrific stories I've ever heard in my life about her father leaving her in a forest, and then then in the morning he comes and gets her, and she finds out that actually he meant to do it. But that didn't annoy her. That it didn't annoy her that he actually left her there. It annoyed her that she was being watched when she thought she wasn't.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a metaphor here for what is currently going on the ship. I think, it's more or less the same thing. It's also telling that she reveals that he did it with her older brother Henry before her as well, which is Henry isn't her brother. We've had this discussion already.
Yeah.
But she did it with her. He did it with her older brother before as well, is what she said.
Yeah.
God, I've written Henry in brackets there. I've done myself. Get rid of that. It is horrific, and I think this is kind of underlining something that I think the audience probably already suspects at this point, which is that her dad, who had her dragged away and seemingly forcibly put to sleep for whatever he's up to in the first episode, probably isn't a great dad. He's probably not. He's probably not a great guy either. So I think this is just reminding us of that.
Yeah. Okay. And then we see that he's got a little tattoo.
Yeah, that symbol's back again.
The little triangle with the line. And then she tries to touch it, and he grabs her arm, and then does like the finger over the lips. Be quiet.
Yeah, so I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why he's not talking. I'd like that. I've got some really like kind of left field that are pretty much baseless theories about how like I don't know, maybe there's like code words or something. Like if you say a certain thing, then you will like wake up or something along those lines, and that's why he doesn't speak. It's still very nebulous and unformed in my head. Okay. But I feel like this boy can speak and isn't because of something like that. Okay,
fair enough. Ike completely rips into the room, shoves him up against the wall, and demands to know. All very normal behavior. But what I'll say is we've actually done. I wanted to in particular mention Andreas Peachman in that scene with his daughter, where just before she goes on fire. The acting, the tears.
He gets a lot. I mean, he goes from like that phenomenal scene of him, weeping as he talks to Nina, and then just like the like rage as he pins this boy up against the wall. And essentially, like in so many words, threatens him unless he gives him the information he wants. Yeah, it's a great range of emotions from old Andreas in this episode.
Yep, it is. I think he's just brilliant. He's just absolutely fantastic. Yeah. He also feels completely different than he did in Dark. In Dark, he's got a range. He's got a range. Okay, so basically the only little bit we haven't really talked about yet in this corridor scene, I suppose, is Daniel just mentions that Mora is an Irish name, but she isn't Irish, and she's like,
yeah,
correct, and then walks into her room.
Yeah. I think this is actually where he makes the eyes at the boy as well.
It is, but we've talked about that already.
Yeah. One thing I will mention very briefly for this is that this was the moment where I made a theory last week that Daniel was part of the crew of the Prometheus because he's wearing like similar clothes. Mm-hmm. But actually looking at it, I don't think it is the same like it is a crew's uniform. It looks slightly different. So I'm not. Yeah, I've actually marked that one as wrong now. Although I'm happy to recant that should it turn out.
I mean, you need to have some wrong. Let's be honest. So I'm not gonna.
Gotta have some red.
Yeah. So based on the uniform, maybe not, but we'll find out later on. What that is. Okay, so some Jerome and Clement stuff now. They again, second people in this episode who we've had say, I feel like I've maybe seen you before. They sort of introduce each other. They talk about birds being in their own prison because they can't stop being themselves. Lots of symbolism going on.
Trapped in who you are, I think, is going to be a recurring theme of this show, potentially for characters we haven't even met yet. I'm sure when Anton Lesser's character comes to the fore and maybe tries to excuse the things that he's done to his children, that will return as like, it's just who I am, I'm just this kind of bastard. But yeah, a theme I'm sure will return, and there is a bit of a frisson, bit of chemistry, shall we say, between Jerome and Clement,
which is interesting considering that he was in their room earlier and and like left the medal there. So
he saw her feet and he was like, "Get a look at those ankles," and that was enough for Jerome.
Yeah. Very romantic, man. But all right, so there's a few little things here we'll sort of skip by because we are going quite long here. Jerome gets beaten.
Knows how to fight based on the number of crewmen he's able to.
I mean,
tussle
he
with.
does. He actually does hold his own there for a while, doesn't he? We get a tiny little scene of Ramiro waking up and looking sad.
Yeah.
And then
it comes back a bit later, to be honest. A few seconds later.
But because we're going through bit by bit, it's I have to mention it. And then,
that's a scene.
Yeah,
it counts.
And then Tova doesn't like Cressa's new little box. Asks him why he accepted it and says that they, assuming it means like rich people, always want something in return.
Yeah. So I am going to assume, based on absolutely nothing, but the fact that she says you of all people should know that makes me think that maybe his like facial scar is something to do with that. Like, and he was I don't know, got involved in like some kind of romance with a rich person, and they turned out to be a real piece of shit who like scarred him for something for trying to break it off or something like that. It's completely baseless, but I think that's gone in the theory matrix.
Okay, interesting, really cool. Next scene, we get back to Ramiro, and Ramiro and Angel give us a big surprise. Not only is Ramiro not a priest, Ramiro is also not Spanish. Actually Portuguese, and it's a Portuguese servant, I believe. And then
he's a Portuguese servant
who also, now I don't know if they're like in a relationship, so to speak, but they're at least partners in some way.
They're definitely not opposed to that kind of relationship.
So
based on how things go down here, we get a bit of angry sex.
Yeah, so they enjoy each other's company. Or do they? They sort of enjoy each other's company for a bit. Still afraid of the police, I'll also mention. Did you see that coming, by the way? The fact that they're lovers?
No, I didn't see the lovers thing coming, to be honest. But I was definitely like, well, these two definitely aren't who they claim to be. And like the fact that they were so scared about turning around. Although admittedly, everyone's kind of scared about going back to where they came from. But they did seem like they maybe were on the run from something. That bit certainly caught me off guard, as did Ramiro being Portuguese. I'm sure anyone like who's Spanish speaking or Portuguese speaking would have spotted an accent a mile off between those two, but I didn't.
Well, I personally knew he was Portuguese from the start because the actor is Portuguese, and making my videos and all leading up to it, I was like, I don't really think they would have cast a Portuguese actor to play a Spanish brother. So I just saw it coming. Also, I will say as well that I can't remember what I was going to say. So, okay, so next up, we're in... I was going to say, actually, yes, my question to you is, how do you see this revelation? Does that affect your understanding or your sort of speculations about the whole Angel Cresta situation? Do you view Angel slightly differently than you did before? What do you think?
No, not really. Like, I think this is, if anything, his relationship with Ramiro seems to kind of mirror his relationship with Cresta in that, if he is indeed a Portuguese servant, then Ramiro and Cresta are of similar social classes, and it's maybe sex is about power as much as it is about the actual act of sex for Angel, and that would, and he bears that out in the fact that he seeks out people who are either reliant on him for employment or otherwise, he wants people to be dependent on him because he enjoys having power over them. That's the impression I get from him, and obviously, Cresta's the next in line.
Bit of the power of the dog about the man. Hopefully we don't see a banjo. Right, okay, so Ike's quarters. We've got the black tile hole, I'm calling it. We've got...
Weirdly, the tunnel that is definitely there seems to have sealed up magically by itself.
Yeah.
As if it doesn't exist. I didn't mention this last time because I wanted to say this now, but like the actual design of the tunnel itself, it's this very like reflective brickwork, which to me seems like a pretty clear visual metaphor for this being a descent into his own memory or something. It's a visualization of introspection because he's literally having to look back at himself in the sort of almost mirrored brickwork that makes up the tunnel.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I actually really love the look of it because it's actually it's almost in a way so different as well. Obviously, very different than the rest of the boat. But that sort of juxtaposition really works for me. It doesn't actually. Yeah. I'm gonna say, Konrad, it could be there. It could be there. There could be a forest in the boat,
but it could be. It could be there. That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe they just maybe that's why the fucking Prometheus sank, because they were like, we've got all these bricks on board. Who did this? Like why are there all these brick tunnels?
Right. Okay. So we've got the Oleg now coming up and saying only got 2 stores of coal left.
Yes, not looking good on the fuel front.
Yeah, and then they start to say, assemble in the dining room. We get a random English crew member saying, of course, with a bloody German running the ship.
Yeah, a little bit of racism. A little bit of anti-German sentiment.
Bigotry, yeah.
Bigotry, yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit of bigotry there. So then Maura sort of leaves the boy in the room. Off she goes to the assembly or the dining hall. Angel and Ramiro, like this is the part where sort of we sort of talked about both of those scenes in one. They sort of start to get it on. Okay, so Daniel, while they're assembling, it seemed to be starting to assemble in the room, or the, what do you call that? The dining room.
Dining room,
Daniel, as I'm going to use your terminology because I love it so much. Daniel deploys the beetle. Ada follows the beetle all the way to Daniel. And then Daniel says, I'm so sorry. And he does look like he means it. Yep. And then we don't know what happens, but basically the next time we see Ada, she's lying on the floor, not looking the best.
No, she doesn't look great.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say she's dead. We cut to him from him saying I'm so sorry to Ava gulping, and there's this weird sound of like kind of mechanical whirring and clicking. Like it's not clear based on from the end of this episode how he has killed Ava.
Ada.
But it didn't. Oh, sorry, Ada. I'll get it right eventually.
Listen. I've seen it all, Konrad. I've watched it all twice now. I'm here to help you. All right, I'm guiding you through this thing, Konrad.
I've written Ava 4 times in these 2 sentences.
I mean, we're listening to about 7 different languages. I think some syllables are going to be misheard here.
Yeah. But so it's not clear how he killed her.
Yeah.
But that sound, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just a weird little sound they throw in to kind of end the scene. But the fact he says, I'm so sorry, this goes back to my theory about Daniel is operating on instructions, I think. Like, he has a part to play in this whole string of events, and he is playing it, but he's very guilty about it. And Baron Oda and Jan Fries have played with this idea of someone kind of unwillingly going along with a predestined plan because they have to do it. They've played with that before, and I think this is going to be another example of one of those kind of characters. I think they're, on the face of it, they're setting Daniel up as this, if not antagonist, then definitely a force for evil in this show. But I don't think it's quite as black and white as it might seem based on what he does in this one.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because it is a theme that these creators have drawn on in the past to create success. So let's see if they have an original take on it, if that is where they go. So Ike announces, not only did he announce that they were going to go to visit the Prometheus, which no one wanted him to do, he's now saying that he's going to turn the ship around because he's closer to the UK or Europe than he is to America. Which
they've still got too far to go. And he's going to tow the Prometheus back as well, which is like, you're not winning any friends here, Ike. I've got to be honest with you.
What's interesting to me is like I'm not a nautical man. I've no idea about ships at all. I didn't actually. It would be interesting to see. I never done this. Look at the maps, because we do see where the boats are on the maps. Last episode, is it true that Europe is closer? Because it did actually look to me like the points were close enough to a landmass.
I definitely felt like in that first map, like North America wasn't that far away.
Yeah, unless obviously they do the whole going up the Atlantic Ocean and down again because it's quicker that way because like, you know, the globe is it's a globe, you know what I mean? So therefore the path a boat or a plane would take is not the one you think it would. So therefore, like, that's what I'm saying. I'm not a nautical man. I have no idea which way is quicker. Maybe as well.
If you know a sailor, get in touch.
Get in touch.
And we can find out.
maybe it's also like the way the tide's going as well will make it quicker. I have no idea.
Sure. Something to do with the moon. That's probably in play as well.
Yeah, definitely the moon, the tides, all this sort of stuff. Okay, so also I wanted to mention here when they're in the dining room and he mentions that they turned the ship around. Obviously, everyone's against this. Virginia speaks very highly against this. By the way, that's Mrs. Wilson's name. We find that out later.
Oh, okay.
It's not a spoiler. I just accidentally said it, but it's not a spoiler. It's like, please, don't shoot me.
You've done it now, Anthony. The whole thing's been unraveled.
It's funny that they didn't actually, because before the show came out, her name was like Virginia on everything. Like they put posters out of people, right? And her name was Virginia on the posters. And then as soon as the show starts, she's known as Mrs. Wilson, and you don't actually hear her name for like 6 episodes. I'm like, is this a spoiler? Is this a spoiler? Like all the posters had her name on it. Anyway, okay, so it's Virginia Wilson.
Okay, that's good to know.
So anyway, so I thought it was funny that Daniel like creepily appears behind Maura during this. After
he kind of looms in a way that I didn't really like. Like he's sort of like, you know, you get those drunk guys at like nightclubs who are trying to like seduce women, and they're kind of just like, I'm gonna dance in here, like kind of, and it's like, no one wants you here, Daniel. All right, just settle down, get out of Maura's personal space, please.
Yeah, especially after you've just like killed a girl, like, you know, let's he's still got the stench of death upon him. All right, so Maura and Ike reveals his letter. Inside the letter had a picture of his family. It also had the newspaper clipping that Maura had been reading. I don't think we actually had confirmation that was in Maura's letter, but it makes sense, I suppose. I don't think we ever saw that in her envelope, but I suppose it makes sense if you were to deduce that she got that newspaper clipping too in the letter. I don't know.
Or that Henry did, and she intercepted it.
Yeah, exactly. Or whatever the letter she has. I mean,
I think my assumption is that it's got the newspaper clipping in it as well, because otherwise, what would lead her to this shipping company and the Kerberos and eventually the Prometheus? Like, you know, it could, if you just got a letter being like, come to New York, and like that wouldn't. There's a lot of ways that could happen. You know, like, it's not it's not specific enough.
Yeah. Okay. So then we get Daniel and Maura again in the corridor. Daniel. It's interesting actually because Maura sort of doesn't want to turn around, wants to keep going. Obviously, we know the motivation there to try and find brother, but Daniel sort of, it's almost like he's kind of implying that she should want to go back to Europe because he says, like, you know, surely you have some family in Europe you'd be happy to see, and like stuff like this. What do you take from that?
I mean, I think Daniel definitely knows more about Maura than she realizes. Maybe knows more about her situation than she realizes. That you know, he's hinting at things that maybe have yet to pass, or that she's yet to find out. That would be I think pretty much everything that he does in this episode, I think, is a catalyst for something else happening, whether it be a personal realization on Mora's part or something that will transpire as a result of Ada's death. So yeah, I'm pretty much suspect of everything Daniel does in this episode as being motivated by some unseen force at this point.
Yeah, let's be honest. It's going to be pretty hard to turn this character back face. Let's see if they can do it, because he's just killed a little girl.
She was asking for... Look, we didn't see the full...
She was a know-it-all. That girl was a know-it-all.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't see what happened at the end of that scene where she punched him in the balls and then started calling him a bunch of anti-Welsh slurs. That was... She had it coming. Let's be honest.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Let's all be honest here. Okay. So there's a couple of quick fire things before we get to the big reveal at the end. So the first thing is that the crew are thinking about sinking the ship.
Yeah, and that I feel like mutiny is on everyone's lips here. Like, no one's saying it.
Yeah.
But it's like there's some knowing glances where it's like, all right, go on 3. We're all gonna say who if Ike was to fall overboard, who the new captain of the ship would be. That's what they're kind of talking in terms of at the moment.
Yeah, they're waiting for the first person to mention the M word. Okay, so then we also have Conor McGregor, Sebastian, actually receives a triangular message.
Yeah, what is going on there? Like that is not Morse code or whatever, however they transmit. I guess that's Morse code. I actually don't know what would have been coming through that machine.
We have seen Morse code coming through before. Like the coordinates.
Yeah, so triangle, as far as I'm aware.
Normal,
yeah, so triangle isn't in the Morse code, I don't think.
Dots and
I'm
lines,
not an expert. I'm not an expert on Morse code. Yeah, dots and dashes. I don't think triangle's in it. So I don't know what's going on there. But he didn't seem... I mean, you only see a very brief glimpse of his face, but he didn't seem that confused by it. Like,
I know exactly what you mean. Like, if you have a machine which its job is to do one thing and then magically or whatever starts to do something else, you would be pretty surprised by that. And
like if it started spouting out like wingdings, you'd be like,
wingdings, yeah.
What's going on here? This machine isn't supposed to be able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so very strange, very strange.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Like, the pyramid or the triangle symbol is just so ever present in everything. Like, it's in the carpet, it's in the French, it's in Clemence's earrings. It feels like it's a substitute for something, or maybe it's some kind of code that your kind of subconscious brain, when you're sleeping, can interpret as something else, or something along those lines. Because, as I say, like, Conor McGregor didn't look surprised by it. He didn't look like he couldn't understand it. So I guess he can read it. Like, is my assumption. Like, and you can't read triangles. You just can't do that. That's not a language. So I think it must be some kind of like language that speaks to the subconscious or something like that that in this state he is able to understand.
Okay. Excellent. So 2 things left. Daniel has a picture of Mora.
Yeah, he's got like a baseball card of
the
rookie card.
Rookie card, yeah.
Yeah, 1899 rookie year.
Yeah, should have turned around to see the stats on the back.
Yeah, I want to know what Mora's on-base percentage is. That's my...
I mean, it doesn't matter anyway, because that was in an era where only white people could play, so...
That's true, yeah, so it doesn't count.
It doesn't count, yeah, Babe Ruth was a fraud. Anyway, so so the last thing is they find Ada's body, they're very perturbed by it, and then, Konrad, the moment everyone...
You would be perturbed by it, let's be honest.
Yeah, this is the moment where anyone who couldn't be bothered listening to our whole podcast skipped to this moment to see your reaction to this. I can already see the little YouTube graph. This is where people are watching. So
it's the money shot.
We zoom out. As we zoom out, we start to get a little bit of like a static or something on top of Ike's face. And then the reveal. Bang. A wall full of what you could only describe as monitors. And maybe I think there's a bookcase on the left-hand side. Yeah,
there's a bookcase on the left. And it's like... It's kind of period... wallpaper. Like, I would place it in like the 60s or maybe the very early 70s is what that wallpaper was evocative of to me. So okay, I don't think that's happening in 1899. It's point one on my. It's point one on my list. If it is, it's a pretty technologically advanced 1899 because I don't think they had TVs for a while. I think it was about 50 years before they had those. So the people, I did pause it to see. So the people in the TV screens, you've got Mustache Adam Driver, Conor McGregor, Boy. I've written down Wilson. Who's Wilson?
Mrs. Wilson.
Oh, Mrs. Wilson. That's right. I was like,
Yeah.
I watched Castaway recently, and I've got
Just
that
the ball.
Wilson. Ling Yi's in there, Jerome, Daniel, and Mora, and they're surrounding Ike.
Yeah.
So you've got. The first thing that struck me is like those aren't the characters that I would have picked as being under observation.
Okay.
Particularly like I mean Daniel, Mora, Ike, yes, but like Adam Driver, Conor McGregor, those two, yeah, they don't feel like they are central to any of the goings on here. So yeah, I was really surprised by their inclusion.
Okay.
But I guess this is telling us who is in this experiment, like who's under observation in whatever they're doing. Like this building where these monitors are must be the same building that we saw Mora and Anton Lesser in at the beginning of the first episode. Like it's got to be, because where else is it going to be? Come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess these, is it 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, these 9 people.
But if you're saying this is in the 60s and 70s, and you also have been referencing a lot about the idea that they're sort of reliving memories or something.
That's a good point.
How's like, I suppose, like, if I was to follow that train of thought and just be you for a second, does that mean that they're experimenting actually on like a 90-year-old Mora?
No. That's a good point that I hadn't considered, actually. I guess maybe it's like mimetic legacy. Like, you know how some people say like you can have like family memories passed down. Like, so maybe Mora is like living out her, like, I guess if it's the 60s, what would be like her grandmother's experiences or something along those lines. Because this is just a complete out of left field guess, but Daniel's saying to Mora, your name's Irish, you're not Irish, and her being like, no, I'm not, to me maybe feels like the woman that she's reliving the memories of was Irish, but Mora has, or not Mora, the character playing, or no, how am I going to word this? The woman who is being projected into the memories of Mora is English and is her great granddaughter or granddaughter or whatever. That's, I mean, that there's no real evidence for that, but maybe that little kind of like nugget of acknowledgement from Daniel and Mora could mean something in this in this context.
I think that's I actually really like that because I have been thinking about that a little bit, not too much, but the line about the Irish name, I did feel that was something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think when I first saw it, maybe I thought, is Daniel trying to sort of put an idea in her mind? I don't really know what I thought at that time, but like it did stand out to me that was a bit interesting, you know what I mean? Well, anyway, there we go. No. There's episode 2. We're on the road to crazy town here, Konrad. I think you can agree.
Yes, I don't know what's going on, as evidenced by my theories in this one. It's all over the place.
It is, yes. So we don't talk about Dark too much on the show, but if anyone's seen Dark, there's a reveal at the end of episode 2 of Dark as well, which sort of shifts the perspective. That was one of my theories before the show came out, was that at the end of episode 2 we'd get a perspective shifting reveal. Ching ching ding ding. Here we go. We're going to quickly move into the Konrad's Theory Matrix. All right, Konrad, off you go and read them out.
Okay, here we go. Lovely. So, 6 theories this week. I don't know if I mentioned one of them, but the ribbon that Ike found belonged to Nina. I wrote that down pretty early on, and it turned out to be correct. So yeah, that was kind of.
We'll get the adjudicators out to decide that one.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it was on the line or not. Ike is also in a similar situation to Maura, and is having memories triggered by having that nursery rhyme played to him in the waking world.
Okay.
A little bit of detail there. Mrs. Wilson is complicit in Maura's father's experiment and has been inserted into this dream memory to guide the other subjects. Lucian, this one is a bad one. We already talked about. Lucian was in command of a unit which contained Jerome and displayed some act of cowardice or otherwise abandoned him, which led to Jerome receiving the Legion of Honor and Jerome now looking to right the wrong.
This is what I'm talking about, Konrad. I said if you just put in that they would they served together, that would be enough.
Imagine if I got it right though. If I get that one right, that's going to be unbelievable. What a pull!
Oh my god.
Lucian and Jerome fought together in the Boxer Rebellion based on nothing other than I looked up the date and it was like, oh, that happened in 1899. And last one, Cresta was given his scar as something to do with Tove's disdain for rich people, saying they always want something in return for gifts.
Okay. Interesting.
So those are the theories for this week.
Yeah, and I think that one there, that last one, is going to take some discussion to get the point wherever we get. But yeah, thanks very much, Konrad. It's a great theory. So if my tally is correct, that's 14 in total so far.
14 in total, yes.
Jeez, see that? Maths teacher.
We're cooking.
Yeah, we're cooking. Right, okay, so we'll head straight on into Konrad's, I suppose, I'm still calling them pre-thoughts, because it is pre-episode 3 now, but post-pre-thoughts. Off you go, Konrad.
Hello there. What an episode of 1899 that was. And what an episode of this review series with me and Anthony. Or, once again, apologies if it was a bad episode. I don't know. We haven't done it yet. I'll have a better idea in about 48 hours' time when we actually record it. So, yes, final thoughts for episode 2 of season 1, The Boy. I'm more certain than ever that this is all some kind of memory experiment, and I think the 9 people pictured in the TV screens at the end of the montage, at the end of the episode, are asleep and having their memories explored in the big mansion we see in the mountains during the opening of the first episode. So I think that's where they are. I think those 9 people, they seem important. They're probably there. Daniel seems very much like a force for evil by the end of this episode, because he murdered a little girl, but I wonder whether he is being forced to do these things. He seems remorseful, so really interested to see where they go with Daniel's character. I'm sure we'll see more of him soon. Love the Ike stuff, very creepy, very like evocative, and it makes the character of Ike so much richer. So that was great. Next episode, I'm just going to make some predictions. I've already made some in the main body that I'm not going to main body of the episode with Anthony that I'm not going to go into here, but just some extra stuff. I was completely wrong about getting more Oleg this episode. We got a bit of Jerome, so that was a bad start. Next episode, I think we'll get more of the boy. Maybe he'll start speaking, maybe he won't. More Daniel. I think they've got to give us some more Daniel, and more Maura, because they've kind of filled in bits of Ike's trauma, but we don't really know anything about Maura's yet, so really interested to see that. But yeah, another great episode. Really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too, and I look forward to seeing you all in the comments telling me how much of an idiot I am for all the things I got wrong in this episode. So yes, I will catch you next time.
Well, there we go. That's episode 2 done. Can't wait for episode 3. We're trying to get them out on a weekly basis. Sometimes they'll be, a day early, day late. Don't judge us on that. There'll be plenty of other content as well. Go and check out my Explain video. Go and check out my other theory videos. Go and check out my questions I want, because I've actually seen the show. Konrad hasn't. So, Konrad, give me a 3-word sum up of this episode. 3 words. Come on. On the spot here, I'll put you.
Boy murders girl.
I love it. I thought you were gonna go the actual boy route, because it's about the boy, but actually you've swerved us there, just like 1899 swerved us, and hopefully we'll continue to swerve Konrad going forward. I'm really looking forward to keeping going through this show, so join us in the next one. But apart from that, goodbye.